Chapter 6. Grade 1 Beast Core. The population of humanity had been decimated to less than 1% because of the monsters. A large majority of industries had stopped, and the environment was suddenly devoid of pollution. After decades of natural cleansing, the air and water were far cleaner than before the advent of the virus. Taking advantage of the remaining light, Yang Tian left the building after tidying up the room. He brought an empty plastic bucket with him and went to the small creek by the city to collect some water. He had just arrived at the bed of the creek and was preparing to fill his bucket when suddenly out of the reeds by the creek appeared two black silver-fanged wolves. Silver-fanged wolves were a common monster in these times. They were numerous and were considered a grade 1 monster. These mutated wolves were named so due to the bright metallic sheen that was present on their teeth. These fangs were extremely sharp and could sever a man's thigh with one bite. They were exceedingly ferocious. These two silver-fanged wolves were larger than a normal wolf and were as well built as an ox. It was the first time Yang Tian had faced off against ferocious monsters, and he could not help but feel some degree of fear. The two silver-fanged wolves bared their fangs at Yang Tian and glared coldly at him. They slowly approached Yang Tian until they were roughly 7 or 8 meters away from him and stopped. They suddenly hunched their bodies and looked as if they were just about to pounce on Yang Tian. Yang Tian had long since abandoned his bucket and drawn the dagger at his waist to assume a defensive stance. Suddenly, one of the silver-fanged wolves leaned on its hind legs and leaped into the air toward Yang Tian. Yang Tian's eyes narrowed. As he did so, the speed of the silver-fanged wolf seemed to have in his eyes. Even if that were the case, the lupin monster was still as fast as lightning. It was far faster than a normal human. In the blink of an eye, the monster's razor-sharp claws were already planted on Yang Tian's shoulder, its jaw gaping wide to take a bite at Yang Tian's neck. At that moment, Yang Tian could even smell the stench from the monster's mouth. Yang Tian was no longer an average human. His strength, speed, and reflexes were far greater than that of a baseline human. The silver-fanged wolf had not yet bitten down on his neck when Yang Tian rotated his body. His left hand shot up like lightning to grab the monster by the neck while his right arm plunged the dagger into its body before twisting it. There was a yelp as bright crimson blood started spurting out of the beast's chest, spraying all over Yang Tian's body. Yang Tian's thrust had pierced the heart of the silver-fanged wolf. It was a fatal wound. Thud. Yang Tian threw the limp carcass of the monster onto the ground and wiped off the droplets of blood on his face. He warily eyed the remaining beast. Wolves were cunning animals. As soon as it saw its companion killed by the human before it, it immediately knew that it was no match for Yang Tian. It retreated into the reeds with its tail between its legs. Whew! Yang Tian let out a long breath. This was Yang Tian's first battle, and while he had come out of it victorious, it still left him feeling anxious. His mental fortitude was commendable. If it were anyone else, they would have turned and ran when faced with such a situation even if their bodies had already been altered. Looking at the silver-fanged wolf carcass he killed, Yang Tian smiled. That was dinner sorted out. The meat of a silver-fanged wolf was edible and was actually rather tasty. Oh yeah! The beast core. Yang Tian knelt and was preparing to cut off 2 legs from the carcass to bring home when he thought about the beast core. It was something that could drastically augment the human body. Although sometimes one needed to kill 10 low-grade monsters in order to find one beast core. Yang Tian used his dagger to drill a hole in the hardened skull of the silver-fanged wolf before using the blade to prise out the insides. In the fading light of dusk, something white glistened within the beast's brains. Seeing the white object, Yang Tian's eyes widened. It was a grade 1 beast core, and it was really white. Yang Tian carefully extracted the white object out of the carcass's skull. This white object was circular. The beast core was no bigger than the tip of his pinky finger and looked almost like a bird egg. The beast core existed in the body of a monster and contained a large amount of power. Scientists found that it was the byproduct of the YS virus mutating the body of the monster before dying and crystallizing. Looking at this white grade 1 beast core, Yang Tian felt a rush of excitement. He never would have thought that his luck would be that good. The first monster he killed had a beast core in it. Very quickly, a question posed itself. Yang Tian wondered if he should eat this beast core. He discovered that his powers were already close to that of a transhuman who had already consumed a grade 1 beast core. Beast cores were hard to come by, even a grade 1 beast core was extremely difficult to obtain. If he were to consume it and had no effect on his powers, would that not be a waste? Let's not worry about it and go back and think about it. This is no place to consume a beast core anyway. Yang Tian looked around and put away the beast core. Collecting the water and wolf legs, he went back for a feast. It had been a very long time since he had eaten fresh meat. Squeak. At that moment, a mouse-like sound could be heard from Yang Tian's chest. Following that, the little green dragon zipped out of his collar and snatched the beast core in Yang Tian's palm with his mouth. It then zipped back into Yang Tian's shirt. The little green dragon was as fast as lightning, and Yang Tian had no time to react. At that moment, Yang Tian did not need to worry because the little green dragon had already decided for him. Hey! My beast core! Give it back! Yang Tian finally reacted and pulled at his collar, yelling at the little green dragon hanging from his chest. However, the little green dragon clambered up to Yang Tian's neck and rubbed its face against Yang Tian's own. Kiss up! Yang Tian's anger subsided. He grabbed the little pipsqueak and shoved him into the pocket of his jeans before walking toward the creek. As Yang Tian cleaned the plastic bucket and filled it with water, the little green dragon squirmed out of his pocket and jumped to the creek bed. It seemed to be drinking some water before it jumped onto Yang Tian's shoulder once more. Its eyes were wide as it looked around, full of curiosity at the world. Yang Tian paid it no mind. After filling it with water, he used his grandfather's dagger to sever the two legs. Carrying the water and the legs, he strode back. It was turning dark, and he wanted to make it back before nightfall to find some firewood to cook the meat. Nighttime was also the domain of the monsters. Even a warrior would have found staying outside in the wilderness a very dangerous business. Yang Tian rapidly returned to the building. He broke down a few pieces of wooden furniture in the rooms of the building, carried the firewood back to the room he had found, and made a fire in the living room. After skinning the two legs, Yang Tian washed the meat with the water he collected. He then used the dagger to cut multiple holes in the meat and sprinkled salt and pepper over it. He then skewered the meat and put it over the fire. The little green dragon continued to lie on Yang Tian's shoulder, curiously looking on. Here. After the wolf leg was cooked, Yang Tian cut out a piece of meat and fed it to the little green dragon. Yang Tian was originally joking and did not think that the little green dragon would eat the roasted morsel. However, the little green dragon jumped down from Yang Tian's shoulder and grabbed the piece of meat Yang Tian offered. As it landed on the floor, it began to eat the meat with gusto. In a few minutes, it had consumed the meat that was the size of a palm. Squeak squeak, after eating the meat, the little green dragon got up again and stared at Yang Tian, squeaking away. You want more? Yang Tian cut another piece of meat and threw it at the little green dragon. It grabbed it with its two front claws and started devouring it. After it finished that morsel, it continued to squeak at Yang Tian. D*MN. You've eaten nearly twice your size. Where does it go? Yang Tian watched the little green dragon in awe as he cut out a larger piece of meat from the wolf leg. Half an hour later. Yang Tian still had not yet eaten as the entire wolf leg was now in the belly of the little green dragon. Yang Tian could only work on cooking the remaining leg. After the leg was cooked, Yang Tian learned his lesson. He paid no mind to the little green dragon who was making puppy eyes at him. He ate his fill first. Something's not right with you today. You snatched my grade 1 beast core without even telling me. That's not right. Next time, you need to tell me. As he spoke, he unknowingly ate nearly half of the wolf leg. The meat on this wolf leg was at least 6 kilograms. Having had his fill, did Yang Tian realize that his appetite had grown significantly. In the past, if he had eaten more than 600 grams of meat, he would have felt stuffed. This was definitely caused by drinking the water that the dragon pearl was soaked in. Since his strength had increased, it meant that his metabolic needs had also increased and he would need to eat more to meet his caloric needs. Yang Tian fed the remaining half of the roasted wolf leg to the little green dragon. Both dragon and man ate 2 wolf legs. They felt extremely content. Yang Tian used a stainless steel pot to boil some water for drinking. After doing that, he checked the doors and windows before pulling out his cell phone from his backpack and calling Qin Fei. "Hello, Yang Tian?" Qin Fei's mellifluous voice could be heard over the line. "Little Fei, I miss you." Yang Tian was very excited when he heard Qin Fei's voice. He told Qin Fei of the day's occurrences. Throughout the call, Qin Fei occasionally made exclamations of surprise, particularly when Yang Fei recounted his encounter with the silver-fanged wolves. After ending the call with Qin Fei, Yang Tian called home. His parents gave him an ear-bashing at first, but they soon began nagging at him warmly. They reminded him to be careful and not to push himself. If he could not take it out there, he could always return home. Chapter 7, Consuming a Grade 1 Beast Core. Yang Tian woke up foggily and felt something licking his face. It was sticky and itchy, and there was also the metallic smell of blood. He opened his eyes and turned over. The little green dragon jumped onto his chest and buried its head in his face. It also stuck out its tongue to lick Yang Tian's chin. Yang Tian felt that the smell of blood grew stronger. It turned out that the smell was coming from the little green dragon's body. Yang Tian picked up the little green dragon's slender body to figure out what the pipsqueak was up to in the middle of the night while he was asleep to be covered in such a strong stench of blood. The little green dragon's body was sticky, but that was not important. The point was that in its claws it held a white orb. A beast core. When he saw this white, bird egg-like object that was no bigger than the tip of his pinky finger, Yang Tian's eyes widened. The little green dragon offered the beast core to Yang Tian as though it were offering tribute, and squeaks came out of its mouth as it did so. Yang Tian reached out his hand and the little green dragon placed the beast core in the palm of his hand. "Where did you get this beast core?" Yang Tian asked curiously. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The little green dragon let out a chain of squeaks, but Yang Tian could not understand. However, from the blood that covered its body, it seems that it had gone and battled some monsters. It was unclear how it could defeat a grade 1 monster with its minute size. This was a safe place. Yang Tian put the little green dragon down and used his sleeve to rub the beast core. He immediately placed it in his mouth and swallowed it into his belly. As soon as it saw Yang Tian swallow the beast core, the little green dragon jumped to one side and looked at Yang Tian with wide eyes. Yang Tian looked at the pipsqueak's eyes and suddenly realized that it was very intelligent. After scolding it last night, it had gone and found another grade 1 beast core in the night as compensation. It was just too mischievous. 10 minutes after swallowing the beast core, Yang Tian felt warmth brewing in his belly and spreading to his entire body. This feeling was similar to the feeling he got when he drank the water that the dragon pearl was soaked in. Half an hour later, the warmth had enveloped his entire body, and he felt extremely comfortable as though he were soaking himself in a hot bath. At this moment, a strong feeling of heaviness came to him, and he unknowingly closed his eyes. When Yang Tian woke up, he felt that his strength had increased significantly once more. Yang Tian glanced at his wristwatch and found out that it was nearly 3 p.m. The little green dragon was lying by the bed, curled up and seemingly asleep. Yang Tian pulled the curtains open and looked outside. It was a season where the weather constantly changed. The sun was out and shining the day before, and it was currently dark and gloomy and looked like it was about to rain. This weather was not good for going out. However, if he did not go out to hunt, he would starve. Yang Tian used his finger to stroke the little green dragon, waking it up. "Come on, let's go out and find something to eat." Yang Tian smiled at it after it woke up. The little green dragon squeaked and happily jumped onto Yang Tian's chest. As usual, it hung off Yang Tian's chest. In a world where monsters existed, one had to constantly hunt down monsters in order to be strong. Then, one would obtain beast cores and could strengthen their bodies after consuming them. After he had strengthened his own body, his combat skills had improved as well. He could obtain even more resources. This was the natural order of things. After leaving, Yang Tian quickly headed to the creek where he watered from the day before. There was a bridge not far downstream, and after crossing it, one could enter the danger zone a few kilometers away. In the danger zone, there was always a chance that a monster would appear out of the bushes or woods or out of a ruined building. Yang Tian became extremely cautious after crossing the bridge, and he was constantly on guard. This time he did not intend to go too far. The objective was just to find some food. After strengthening himself, Yang Tian found that he was very easily hungry. After traveling for a short while, the little green dragon suddenly crawled out from Yang Tian's embrace, jumped onto the ground, and rushed into a bush nearby. Immediately after, there was hissing sound. Squeak squeak. At that moment, the little green dragon could be heard as well. Yang Tian heard the noise, and thinking the little green dragon to be in danger, he immediately ran over. Whoosh! Yang Tian had not even gotten close to the bush when a massive green python slithered out of the bush and brought with it the sound of rushing wind. This python was 10 meters long and was as thick as a man's thigh. A mutated python. The name of this python suddenly surfaced in Yang Tian's mind. Yang Tian had memorized the information of every known monster, which was a mandatory subject in high school. Because he knew the information of every monster, when he met one he could accurately gauge its strength. This was a grade 1 green python. The method to differentiate monsters was primarily in feeling the strength of their breath. The stronger the monster, the stronger the breath. A normal person would find it very difficult to differentiate the grade of monsters based on its breathing. However, a transhuman who had consumed a beast core could easily judge it. It was just like second nature. The moment Yang Tian saw the giant snake, his mind had already decided. This giant python that appeared from the bushes seemed to be in great pain as the little green dragon was lying on its diamond-shaped head. Its claws were constantly scratching at the green python's head. The little green dragon was extremely fast, and one could only see its shadow. In a few heartbeats, it had bored into the giant python's skull and dispatched the beast. Squeak squeak. After dispatching the giant python, the little green dragon chirped happily and dug out a white beast core. At that, Yang Tian finally realized how the little green dragon could defeat grade 1 monsters. Its claws were able to carve through even the most sturdy materials. It was noteworthy that the bones of a grade 1 monster were as hard as granite. The little green dragon clasped the beast core and jumped onto Yang Tian's body, offering it to him as though it were offering tribute. Yang Tian took the beast core thinking that his luck was amazing. Within a day, he had obtained 3 grade 1 beast cores. The first one was by chance, but the second and third ones were thanks to the little green dragon. After giving the beast core to Yang Tian, the little green dragon jumped onto the carcass of the python and squeaked a few times. Yang Tian smiled, understanding the little green dragon's meaning. It was hungry. In this weather, meat would go bad after a while. Yang Tian put away the beast core and used his dagger to skin the python. He then cut out roughly 12 kilograms of meat and put it in the plastic bag he had on him before turning back to Huangqiu City. Python meat tasted pretty good. When he returned to the 5-story building, Yang Tian cut the python meat into little cubes since he had time. He then seasoned it in a large pan before skewering it and roasting it over the fire. As soon as one skewer was cooked, the little green dragon ate one. Yang Tian had no complaints because the little green dragon had obtained a grade 1 beast core for him. If he sold this in the black market in the high alert area, he could easily sell it for over 100,000 wu. After eating over 6 kilograms of meat, the little green dragon was finally satisfied. Yang Tian still could not understand how this pipsqueak's belly could hold so much meat. Could it be that there was a magical hole that defied the laws of space and time in its belly? Just as the previous day, after Yang Tian ate his fill, he checked the doors and windows before using the bathroom to relieve himself. He then took a cold shower and changed his clothes. Chapter 8, Grade 2 Tank Lizard. The next day, Yang Tian woke up early. It was just past 7 a.m. After eating the leftovers of the roasted meat, Yang Tian checked his equipment. He then put on his grandfather's combat pack and brought the little green dragon out again. On this excursion, Yang Tian wanted to kill a grade 2 monster, obtain even more beast cores, and trade them for necessities in the high alert area outside of Tianxiang City. Constantly killing monsters and obtaining their beast cores not only rewarded beast cores. It also helped him develop his combat ability. To humanity, it was a miserable world, but to transhumans and the rich, it was a world of opportunity. This was because one would no longer fall sick after consuming beast cores unless they were killed by monsters or other humans. Their natural lifespan would also be extended to more than 150 years. A long life meant more time to enjoy it. Other than Tianxiang City, the high alert area was also a major population center. Those who lived in the high alert area were particularly strong men who were always looking for opportunities to make a life for themselves in the free zones. They never traveled alone and always formed bands of a dozen or so. They would pool their funds to buy weapons and hunt for low-grade monsters. If they were lucky, they would obtain a beast core after they killed a monster. They would then sell it and split the money. Even if they did not find a beast core, they could still bring back a large amount of meat as provisions. The materials that could be obtained from the carcass of a monster could also be sold for money. This was normal. An abnormal occurrence would be that after obtaining a beast core, the band would turn on each other and the last survivor would have the chance to ascend to be a transhuman. Yang Tian had read about such accounts recorded in his grandfather's diary. Yang Tian repeated his journey as the day before. After crossing the bridge, he traveled for an hour. When he walked along a mountain path, he could hear gunfire in front of him. He was curious and rapidly ran toward the direction of the gunfire. 5 minutes later, Yang Tian found himself behind a boulder by a main road. He stretched his head out to look. He could see a dozen or so men shooting at each other. As they traded shots, they were cursing. From time to time someone was hit, and he would let out a terrible cry. From their curses, Yang Tian deduced that these men were fighting over a grade 1 beast core which they had just obtained. Yang Tian did not naturally care about these matters. He shrunk back behind the rock and waited silently. 10 minutes later, the gunfire stopped. Yang Tian thought that there was a victor. He was just about to get up and survey the situation when there was a shriek. Following that, someone shouted, "Let's not fight anymore. There's a grade 2 beast. Run." Hiss. 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 Soon after, the sound of electric grenades exploding and a cacophony of footsteps could be heard. Yang Tian got up in curiosity and looked over the boulder. He could see 8 or 9 men being chased by a giant yellow lizard. The men were running at full speed but they could not outrun this massive reptile. The giant lizard's tongue coiled around the abdomen of a straggler and swallowed the poor wretch whole. A grade 2 tank lizard. Yang Tian was awed as he immediately identified this giant lizard. Its body was 10 meters long and 3 meters high. When it moved, it looked like a heavy tank. It knocked over any trees in its way, and even boulders were crushed beneath its tread. These men had turned on each other over a chance at obtaining a beast core, and they were not worth any pity. Judging by their speed, Yang Tian estimated that they would never reach him. They would all be eaten by the tank lizard. However, seeing the fear and despair on their faces, even the battle-hardened Yang Tian felt pity. He drew his dagger and vaulted over the boulder, charging forward. There were 7 men left. These men looked at Yang Tian, who was charging forward with his dagger as their savior. They could all tell that Yang Tian was a transhuman. Only a transhuman possessed such speed. Ah! The last man in the rear had been caught by the tank lizard's tongue. His shriek of fear had just started to escape his lungs when he was swallowed whole by the reptilian. This was not a Rice Nation blockbuster where humans could survive after being swallowed whole by a python. The belly of a tank lizard was full of powerful corrosive acids and digestive enzymes. It could instantly dissolve a man's flesh into bone. Even metal could be dissolved by those digestive juices. There was only death in a tank lizard's belly. There were only 6 men left. Yang Tian passed by them and continued charging at the tank lizard. Upon seeing a human approach, the beast paused. It opened its mouth and shot out its long, slimy tongue at Yang Tian. The tank lizard's tongue was impossibly fast. A baseline human would not be able to avoid it if they were to stray into the beast's range. However, Yang Tian was a transhuman. No matter in speed or strength, he exceeded a baseline human. As the lizard's tongue coiled toward him, he immediately stopped and rolled to one side of the road, evading the tank lizard's tongue. Taking advantage of the beast needing to recoil its tongue, Yang Tian pumped his legs and charged to the underbelly of the reptile. Humanity and monsters had done battle for decades, and many combat tactics had been developed to take on different monsters. For example, when taking on a tank lizard, it was best to close the distance with it to prevent it from being able to use its tongue. This was because the tongue was too terrifying. It was able to lash out and recoil in the blink of an eye. The tank lizard's weak spot was its belly. Even though it was covered in hard, shiny scales, the scales of the belly were the thinnest. After reaching the tank lizard's underbelly, Yang Tian used his dagger and stabbed it with all his might. He pushed the blade into the belly of the beast and pulled hard, leaving a wound nearly a meter long on the reptile's belly. At that moment, Yang Tian saw the membrane of the tank lizard. Though the blade went deep, it had not pierced the abdomen and harmed the lizard's organs. In response to the pain, the tank lizard let out a hiss. Its limbs quickly moved and it dashed more than 10 meters forward before its monstrous tail slammed downward. Yang Tian saw the oncoming tail, and he dared not block it. Instead, he rolled on the ground. Thud. The tank lizard's tail slammed into the ground, making a tremendous noise. The stone under it cracked. Yang Tian got up only to see the beast had turned around and opened its mouth. F***ck. Yang Tian was shocked. He turned his body and threw himself down. A rush of air blew past his back, foul with decay. Yang Tian knew the danger was not yet over. This massive beast's tongue was extremely agile, and it could even change direction when recoiling its tongue. Taking advantage of the moment he had while the beast recoiled its tongue, he stepped onto a boulder, and using force, he slid his body along the hard stone for a couple of meters. The danger had not yet passed. When Yang Tian stopped sliding, the tank lizard opened its mouth again and shot out its slimy tongue at him. Fortunately, there was a large pine tree next to him, and Yang Tian dashed behind it for cover. The dark red tongue of the tank lizard zipped past the tree. When it was being recoiled, it wrapped around the tree. With one pull, the brute managed to uproot the entire tree and discard it to one side. Chapter 9, Killer. God damn. This is a bit too much. Yang Tian exclaimed as he ran toward the forest while the tank lizard's tongue was still stuck to the tree trunk. Yang Tian shouted as he ran, "Little dragon, come out and help. If you don't, no one's going to make roasted meat for you in the future." Squeak squeak. The little green dragon squeaked from Yang Tian's chest and suddenly zipped out of Yang Tian's sleeves. Its speed was the fastest Yang Tian had ever seen, like a flash of light. A rumbling sound could be heard from behind him. The tank lizard had caught up in a short few seconds. Luckily, Yang Tian passed by another large tree. With a burst of speed, he hid behind the tree and turned to take a look. The little green dragon, when compared to the tank lizard, was minuscule. However, it was incredibly fast, and at that moment it was already on the beast's back. The little green dragon leaped a few times and reached the tank lizard's head. With a few slashes of its claws, it blinded one of the beast's eyes. The tank lizard spat its tongue out in the direction of its wounded eye. However, the little green dragon had already jumped off to the ground. Hiss! The tank lizard hissed again, and it seemed enraged. It spun on the spot as though it were looking for the little green dragon. The eyes were the tank lizard's most vulnerable spot. When it was not blinded, it did not make for a good target. At this time, it was an opportune moment. Taking advantage of the fact that the little green dragon was running circles around the tank lizard, drawing its attention, Yang Tian charged at the reptile again. He suddenly leaped into the air and savagely impaled the tank lizard's remaining good eye with his dagger. After that he kicked the beast's head, propelling his body away. Then, the tank lizard was no longer Yang Tian's opponent. Having lost its sight, the tank lizard's tongue was useless. Yang Tian pulled out another dagger and cut out a thick pine branch. He immediately shaved it into a sharp point. Holding the 2-meter-long tree branch, Yang Tian charged at the abdomen of the tank lizard and shoved it deep into the wound he had previously made. He then savagely twisted the makeshift pike around, turning the beast's internal organs into a pulp. Yang Tian then beat a hasty retreat. Boom, boom, boom. Yang Tian held his hands together 20 meters away, watching as the tank lizard struggled in pain. He believed that it would not take long for the brute to roll over and die. The tank lizard was resilient, but even it could not survive damage to the internal organs. At that moment, Yang Tian watched in anticipation. The higher the grade of monster, the higher the chances it had of creating a beast core. The tank lizard finally collapsed, unmoving. It seemed that it was finally dead. Yang Tian carefully picked up a rock and threw it at the tank lizard. It struck the beast on its head, but it did not react. Yang Tian carefully approached it, dagger in hand. Yang Tian finally sighed in relief when he retrieved the dagger stuck in the beast's eye. This battle had drained him immensely, and his body was dyed red in the blood of the beast. Following that, it was time to inspect the tank lizard's skull to see if there was a beast core. Yang Tian used his dagger to peel away the tank lizard's skin before using the dagger to bore away at the bone. After expending a lot of energy, he finally drilled a hole the size of his fist. Yang Tian was extremely lucky. He used the dagger to dig around in the lizard's brains, and found a yellow beast core the size of the tip of his thumb. Because of its size, this beast core did not really shine. Perhaps it was because the energy was less concentrated. Yang Tian looked at the beast core and hid it in the pocket of his shirt. The little green dragon did not act as before to snatch the grade 2 beast core. Instead, it returned to Yang Tian's chest, closed its eyes, and appeared to have gone to sleep. It was already noontime to head back. When Yang Tian sheathed his dagger and put his backpack back on, the group of 6 men who were originally fleeing was approaching him, guns in hand. Yang Tian frowned and raised his guard as these men approached. These men were armed with guns, and he was not yet bulletproof. His body was not as tough as a monster's. Bro. Thank you. If it weren't for you, we'd all be goners. As the men approached, their leader, a large bald man, spoke to Yang Tian with a smile. Yang Tian smiled widely and waved his hand. Just helping out? Also, why haven't you guys left? The large bald man laughed, and said, we stayed to see if we could help. However, you're just too good, bro. You could take on the tank lizard by yourself. As he finished speaking, he extended his hand saying, I'm Wang Wei, it's very good to meet you. Even though Yang Tian was wary of these men, they had not shown any hostile intentions. Yang Tian extended his hand and shook Wang Wei's hand. Wang Wei turned and continued to introduce Yang Tian, these 5 gentlemen are all my companions. Li Feng, Zhao San, Sun Ming, Lin Zhong, and Lu Hao. Yang Tian waved at the 5 men and introduced himself, my name is Yang Tian. Brother Yang, we'd like to buy you a meal if you would be willing. We would all like to get to know someone as strong as you. Wang Wei smiled as he spoke. Yang Tian hesitated, but nodded. Wang Wei smiled when he saw Yang Tian's agreement. Come then, Brother Yang. We'll take our car back to the high alert area. There's a good bar there. And there are a few new girls there, they're all still fresh. We'll introduce you to them. Yang Tian knew this fellow was not a good man upon hearing his words. Now that he thought about it, he had gotten a strange vibe from their previous conversations. Wang Wei finished talking and turned to lead Yang Tian toward the road. When they left the mountain path and got onto a wide asphalt road, Yang Tian saw that there were 3 black 4-wheel drives parked. In this era, cars were rarely seen. It was clear that Wang Wei wielded some influence in the high alert area. Wang Wei pointed at the 3 cars as he spoke, Brother Yang must have come from the other road. You can only park in this area. As he spoke, Wang Wei picked up the pace. Meanwhile, Wang Wei's companions slowed their pace, slowly lengthening their distance from Yang Tian. Go! Suddenly, Wang Wei turned and yelled. Yang Tian's eyes narrowed and he rolled on the ground to dash behind a boulder by the road. Bang bang bang. Almost simultaneously, multiple gunshots could be heard. A hail of bullets whizzed past Yang Tian's arm, one of them even grazing him. The boulder Yang Tian was using as a cover was a little small and he could not conceal his entire body behind it. It was fortunate that Yang Tian was cautious and situationally aware. At that moment, he realized something was off and had immediately dashed away. If he were to stay in that open area, he would have been turned into Swiss cheese. Chapter 10, Killer, 2. It all happened in an instant, and Wang Wei did not expect everything to move that quickly. Previously, after Wang Wei and the others had escaped, they thought to immediately leave in the car. However, the Grade 2 Beast Core was too tempting to them. The 6 of them gathered together and discussed it before deciding to wait for a while. If Yang Tian died, they would immediately flee by car. If Yang Tian was victorious and extracted a Grade 2 Beast Core from the tank lizard's carcass, they would find a way to kill him and claim the Grade 2 Beast Core. They had a lot of confidence in this plan. In their judgment, even if Yang Tian succeeded, he would be exhausted and would need time to rest and recuperate. If they could get close to Yang Tian, they had more than a 50% chance to kill him. Wang Wei did not expect that before they could open fire, Yang Tian had already dashed off to one side and took cover behind a boulder. However, it was no big deal. If bullets could not hit him, there were still electric grenades. Use electric grenades! Wang Wei bellowed. The gunfire stopped. He thought that these men had perhaps never witnessed the terrible power of a transhuman. This short window of time was Yang Tian's opportunity. As Wang Wei shouted and the gunfire briefly stopped, Yang Tian rapidly turned and threw a dagger. Oh! The dagger embedded itself in between the eyes of one of the men. Yang Tian did not stop moving and threw the other dagger, which buried itself in the chest of another man. Sun Ming and Lu Hao were the ones killed by Yang Tian. Yang Tian had an excellent memory, and he remembered the names of every man when Wang Wei introduced them. After throwing 2 daggers, Yang Tian was weaponless. He thought to himself that he should have brought a gun, but how could he expect to encounter humans fighting among themselves? This was a mistake to Yang Tian. Outside the city, if one wanted to survive, they had to be wary of not only the monsters but their own species as well. Witnessing Yang Tian kill 2 men in the blink of an eye, the other men immediately felt fearful and turned to run. Wang Wei cursed the three cowards. He activated the electric grenade in his hand and chucked it at Yang Tian. The electric grenade was a new type of weapon. When it detonated, there was an explosion radius of over 10 meters. Within this radius, both human and monster would be subject to a very powerful electric attack. From experiments, baseline humans would be unable to resist this shock of electricity. Only strong warriors and monsters would not be at risk of losing their lives. Wang Wei intended to stun Yang Tian, and then finish him off with a bullet. The plan was perfect, but reality was cruel. The grenades he threw had yet to touch the ground when they were caught by Yang Tian. He then quickly threw them back at Wang Wei. As powerful as electric grenades were, they had a 3 to 4 second delay. Wang Wei did not think to wait for a moment after arming the grenade before throwing it. Even if he did, Yang Tian would not give him the time. Buzz buzz. The two grenades detonated near Wang Wei, releasing a colossal amount of electric energy. Wang Wei's body was within range of the electric field, and his body spasmed as if he was possessed. His eyes rolled back into his head and he trembled uncontrollably. When the electricity finally dissipated, his rigid body collapsed onto the ground. Yang Tian had long since vaulted over the boulder and picked up an assault rifle from one of the corpses. He fired into the backs of the three men who were trying to get into a car. Yang Tian had learned how to fire a gun in school. It was a compulsory course in times like these. After his ascension, Yang Tian's ability to control a firearm had improved as well. His marksmanship was perfect, and in an instant, he had dispatched the other three men. Yang Tian walked over to Wang Wei's corpse and fired twice at it. Just in case. Yang Tian was growing step by step. That day, he learned to be ruthless. If he had not allowed Wang Wei and company to approach him from the start, they would not have had the chance to ambush him. Yang Tian would have not needed to deal with this sort of trouble. Yang Tian had not spent long outside of the city, and he was clearly still naive in some respects. However, he was maturing quickly. There was some gain from this encounter. That was the three cars. At least in the future, when he traveled, he would not need to walk. He could also transport more items. The doors of all three cars were open, and the car keys were there too. Yang Tian inspected the vehicles and found a crate of drinking water, a crate of biscuits, and a crate of tinned beef. These items were all produced in Tianxiang City, and they were not cheap in the high alert area outside the city. It seemed that Wang Wei and his company lived a good life. It was a shame that humans were never satisfied. Even if they lived good lives, they wanted better lives. After inspecting the three vehicles, Yang Tian suddenly remembered that these men were previously fighting over a grade 1 beast core. That meant that the beast core must be on one of these men. Yang Tian searched the 6 corpses but did not find anything. Perhaps the grade 1 beast core was on the body of one of those who died previously. Or maybe it was on the body of those who were swallowed by the tank lizard. A grade 1 beast core could get up to 500,000 Wu in the high alert area. It would be a shame to give up on it. Yang Tian turned back to the area in which he battled the tank lizard and searched the 5 corpses there but found nothing. It seemed that the beast core was likely on one of the men swallowed by the tank lizard. The beast core would no longer exist if it were in the belly of the tank lizard. Although, Yang Tian still found some loot from this trip on top of the items on the previous 6 men. He had collected 10 assault rifles in good condition, a dozen magazines, and 20 or more electric grenades. He also found 30,000 Wu. What a shame. It would be great if I found that grade 1 beast core. 500,000 Wu. Yang Tian leaned on the hood of the car and shook his head as he lamented. Squeak squeak. At that moment, the little green dragon squeaked twice and crawled out. After that, the little pipsqueak jumped into a car. A moment later, it reappeared with a white beast core in its claws. Hey little guy, how did you find that? Yang Tian accepted the beast core from the little green dragon as he chuckled. Squeak squeak squeak. The little green dragon squeaked as though it were boasting. Even though he could not understand what was being said, Yang Tian knew that the little green dragon had a special ability to detect beast cores. This time it had found a beast core in a car. Perhaps it had a superior sense of smell. However, what about the beast cores in the monsters? Those could not possibly be smelled out. At least with the little green dragon, the process of looking for beast cores would be much simpler when he hunted for monsters. It would not be like the others where it was purely a game of luck. After gathering all the weapons and supplies in the trunk of one of the cars, Yang Tian looked at the corpses for a moment before driving off. He did not need to take care of these corpses. Within a night, they would be turned to bone. The world outside the city was just that cruel. He drove back to Huangqiu City. It was just past 3 p.m., and Yang Tian had no intention to go out hunting. He found 4 empty plastic jugs and drove to the creek. He filled the jugs with water and returned to his temporary accommodation at the 5-story building.
This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video. See you in the next one.